While living in Costa Rica over 10 years ago, my wife and I traveled to El Salvador, specifically a cobblestone village by the name of Xochitoto. I remember sitting on a bench in the middle of town, watching kids play and their parents or grandparents chat. They didn't have a house in the cul-de-sac suburbs, a 2-car garage, or I assume a high-paying job to fill their modest homes with the latest and unnecessary shit. Have you seen the new air fryer? It vacuums your crumbs and fries them again! These Salvadorans looked light years happier than the faces I was used to seeing behind windshields and car windows, glancing at their text messages or cursing out the driver ahead of them for having the audacity to exist on the same road as them. But many of those drivers were living what we as Americans are told to aspire towards our entire lives. That is, the American dream. Marriage, 2 kids, 2 cars, and a McMansion in the suburbs. Maybe a boat just to make it clear. Yeah, I have boat money, bitches. Since that visit to El Salvador, I've moved to Germany and traveled to roughly 60 countries around the world, from the ancestral lands of Kenya's Maasai warriors to the rural villages of Laos. And through those travels, I learned more about the American dream than I ever could have from the climate-controlled comfort of suburban America. Turns out, a dream can also be a nightmare. My name is Joe Bauer, an American immigrant in Germany who makes videos about living and traveling abroad. And in this video, I'm going to share what traveling to 60 countries has taught me about the American dream. Is it as wonderful as Hollywood has made it out to be? Is it a dreadful dystopian nightmare? Will I stop asking rhetorical questions and get to the point? What is the American dream? Encyclopedia Britannica defines the American dream as the ideal that the United States is a land of opportunity that allows the possibility of upward mobility, freedom, and equality for people of all classes who work hard and have the will to succeed. The roots of this idea go back to the first European settlers and colonizers, but it was an American businessman and historian by the name of James Truslow Adams who coined the phrase in his 1931 book, The Epic of America. Interestingly, he defined the American dream as, quote, not a dream of motor cars and high wages merely, but a dream of a social order in which each man and each woman shall be able to attain to the fullest stature of which they are innately capable, and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of the fortuitous circumstances of birth or position. Honestly, that's beautiful. Unfortunately, it's just that. A dream, with as much basis in reality as the ones I had as a kid where I could run as fast as Sonic the Hedgehog, though honestly maybe it's a good thing I'm not like Sonic, otherwise I'd die from the mere touch of a spike. The fact is, the fortuitous circumstances of our birth play an incredible role in how we are recognized by others. Here's what reality has to say about the American dream. In America, nearly 11 million children are poor according to the Center for American Progress. That's 1 in 7 kids who make up almost 1/3 of all people living in poverty in this country. This number should be unimaginable in one of the world's wealthiest countries, and yet child poverty has remained stubbornly high for decades across the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is made up of 37 countries including Denmark, New Zealand, Spain, and the United Kingdom. The United States is consistently ranked as one of the worst in child poverty rates. That's not great, especially as income inequality continues to widen and the country's tech leaders like Sam Altman are just frothing at the mouth to replace us all with AI drones. The OpenAI final boss of Douchebag the video game recently defended AI's energy use by saying, quote, people talk about how much energy it takes to train an AI model, but it also takes a lot of energy to train a human. It takes about 20 years of life and all the food you consume during that time before you become smart. 1,000 apologies for eating over the past 20 years, Sam. I'll be sure to switch to the AI diet, which I can only assume is replacing food with 1 trillion gallons of water and then pissing directly into my neighbor's drinking glass.
My neighbor's driving by and I'm drinking out of the hose and he's like, hey, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Even if you do aspire to change your social standing, that might not be possible in America. According to a 2020 study from the World Economic Forum, the US ranks 27th in social mobility, behind almost every developed nation. Meanwhile, in Denmark, a 2024 study shows that your background isn't all that important. While children of immigrants are more likely to come from deprived backgrounds, they do not experience substantially different outcomes conditional on parental background. So far, the American dream seems more attainable in a country like Denmark than, you know, America. But the American dream isn't just about climbing the ladder. It's also about freedom. The freedom to live how you want, to pursue your passions, to have time with your family. And on this front, America also falls short. Americans work more hours than almost any developed nation. We also get less vacation time, an average of 10 days compared to 25 to 30 in most of Europe. We retire later, if we retire at all, and we spend more time commuting, often alone in cars, stuck in traffic, wasting our lives away one red light at a time. I've talked before about how American suburbs force me indoors and into cars, but it's not just about being inside, it's about being trapped. Trapped at work, trapped in your car, trapped by a system that says freedom, but delivers exhaustion. Compare that to Europe, where I've met people across the continent who regularly take 2 or more weeks off at a time for vacation. Email someone in Germany in August and you might get a charmingly aggressive bounce back that reads something to the effect of, "I am on vacation, I will not respond to your email will not be forwarded, you can reach me again on this date." Jeez! The paradox is this: America promises freedom, but delivers a life where you're too busy, too tired, and too broke to actually be free. Meanwhile, other countries are delivering more actual freedom. Time with your family, time to travel, time to rest, time to live your life. Society is designed around human beings instead of quarterly earnings reports. Now the problem is, you're either explicitly or subconsciously taught growing up in the US that this kind of opportunity, freedom, and prosperity is only possible in America, aka the greatest country on earth. And this sentiment is widely shared by politicians across the political spectrum and your disappointingly MAGA relatives who likely haven't traveled beyond the confines of their local Applebee's. For the love of God, Derek, they are not your neighborhood bar and grill. It's just a slogan. Growing up, I believed the American dream and the millions yearning for it from around the world is what made America exceptional. Then I started traveling beyond the borders of my local Applebee's, visiting and meeting people in some 60 countries around the world. Turns out, nice things exist just about everywhere in the world. Uzbeks in Tashkent drive up to the nearby ski resort for a weekend getaway, North Macedonians enjoy a hot night out in the Old Town, and Chinese tourists relish the sight of a silly pale foreigner jumping into a Laotian lagoon. Sunglasses on, people, the falling sun is about to perform! Now, some people did indicate an interest or even a dream of moving to the US one day, but I'd argue that's largely due to our Hollywood depictions of the American dream and the kind of wealth you can, if you're very, very lucky, accumulate there. But mostly, I found that people are quite content with their lives, wherever they may be. Sure, they had dreams, but their dreams weren't about accumulating stuff. They were about enjoying life, building community, and, living well. Which brings me to a key ingredient of the American dream: prosperity. America delivers on prosperity if you define prosperity as stuff. We have bigger houses, more cars, more gadgets than almost any country on earth. The average American home is 2,400 square feet. In Germany, it's 1,000. In Paris, roughly 520 square feet. Even smaller than Tokyo. But I've learned that more stuff doesn't equal a better life. I have far fewer things here than I did when I lived in the United States, and I visited places where families live far more modest lives than the average American. I'm not going to romanticize poverty. I'm sure many of those people would like a few trappings of the typical American dream. But I think far too many Americans have grown overly attached to their things. So much so that we all recognize Parker Posey's character in White Lotus when she said she would rather off herself than live an uncomfortable life without her creature comforts.
What if we lost everything?
Honestly, I don't know if I'd want to live.
Why would you say that?
I just don't think at this age I'm meant to live an uncomfortable life.
And that's the trap of the American dream. Too many of us have confused prosperity with consumption. We think more stuff equals a better life, but traveling and living abroad has shown me that a rich and fulfilling life cannot be bought on Amazon and shipped directly to your front door. You need a society that values rest, community, equality, and freedom from blood-sucking health insurance companies, or pick your favorite societal evil. Mine's car-oriented hellscapes. American prosperity often means a big house in the suburbs, 2 cars, a big TV, and total isolation. You don't know your neighbors on the other side of the fence, you drive everywhere alone, you work yourself to death to try and keep up with the Joneses. To me, that's a nightmare, not a dream. Now don't get me wrong, I still believe in the core idea of the American dream. People should be able to build a good life for themselves regardless of who they are or where they come from. And many immigrants to the United States and born Americans themselves have been able to do that. But to do it these days just seems increasingly impossible in the United States. And after traveling to roughly 60 countries, I've learned that the dream looks a whole lot different than I was taught growing up in America, and that the United States doesn't hold a monopoly on a good life. I think that's why we're increasingly seeing Americans move abroad in record numbers, because you don't know what you don't know. If you, as I did, grew up thinking that having access to both an Applebee's and a TGI Fridays is heaven on earth, then you can't imagine that anyone has it better anywhere else. You buy into the mythology that this is indeed the greatest country on earth, and you get defensive whenever someone challenges that idea. Adams was right about what the dream should be, a society where everyone can reach their full potential regardless of birth or position. The problem isn't the dream, it's that we stopped building and supporting the systems that make it possible. Affordable healthcare, affordable education, communities you don't need a car to live in and be a part of society. Other countries figured this out. They're not perfect, no country is, but they're a hell of a lot closer to Adams' vision than we are. Unless, of course, we realign the dream to be something along the lines of, oh, I don't know, ignoring all of our problems and just start dropping bombs to create a nice big flashy distraction again. Now, although I have my problems with the American dream, I actually quite like American people. And in this video, I share everything I think Europeans and the rest of the world get wrong about my fellow Americans.